Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy, Jonathan Macri, with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. Feeling good, feeling refreshed, feeling revitalized. Couple weeks into the offseason. We're further distanced from this year that was filled with many a trial and tribulation. And we continue to set our sights on the things that will be coming down the pike. We'll be getting into that in a bit. We also have some little bit of news to discuss. But first, I will, as I always do, introduce my wonderful co-host, Jeremy Cohen. Hello, Jeremy.
Hello, John. How are you?
I'm good. I had a nice weekend. I had a nice week off. We've been taking a little time. As I said, I think I shared this on the pod last week. Went down to Baltimore, had some crabs, had some crab cakes, saw some fish.
Went to the ocean.
What?
Went to the ocean.
Went to the ocean.
That's how that's a Baltimore accent. Ocean.
I would not even attempt to try that.
That's okay. I did it for us. We're good.
It was very good.
Thank you.
So that was cool. Shout out to the folks at LP Steamers, make the best crabs in Baltimore. That was fun, and it's been and now we're here for another episode, and I feel like we're in the midst of that quiet portion of the offseason for not only the Knicks, but for all the teams that didn't make the playoffs. And I feel like the news cycle is going to get started in earnest, maybe after the first round of the playoffs, after like 8 teams get eliminated and you get that many people into the pot who are going to be perhaps feeling a little antsy about their situation, expected to go further, expected to do better. And all that stuff. So it's been a little quiet, which I'm fine with, but we did get a little bit of something, which was RJ Barrett went on a podcast, not this podcast, unfortunately, went on a podcast with his Duke buddy, JJ Redick, and he said a lot of things. Did you listen to this podcast, Jeremy?
I did, John. I did. It was a very good podcast. I really enjoyed it. It was insightful. And there's some great things that I learned about, just that as an average person wouldn't necessarily know without that type of kind of peeling back the curtain. So it was nice to get that perspective from RJ.
I will come out and say that I got the Cliff Notes version of the interview. I did not sit and listen to the whole thing, but I got what I needed to get out of it, and I agree with you. It's the bites that I heard and the things that I read about that he said, nothing bad, right? Was there anything that anybody said was like, this is concerning from this? Because I didn't catch that if there was. Well,
he did mention that there was this podcaster and content creator named Jonathan Macri who he's eating a live crow at some point because of the doubts that he had. It was weird. I don't know. But other than that, it was pretty run of the mill.
I can't find the crow.
Yeah, well, we'll have to order you.
Maybe the crow flew away.
Maybe it did. Maybe it went back to RJ.
Maybe you finished eating it. Now we need to send you a new one.
I'll never be finished eating the crow. Yeah. I will never be finished eating the crow. No, so listen, you actually listened to the thing, so I'll let you tee off this one. Of all the stuff that he said, he talked about DeMar DeRozan. He obviously talked about Tibbs. He talked about a lot about Duke, predictably, because this was with JJ Redick, another Duke alum. And he mentioned his extension a little bit. Out of everything he said, what would you say was, I don't know, your biggest takeaway, your favorite thing that he said, whatever you want to go with it?
I'd say it was nice to get an understanding of where he needs to go after facing the Hawks last year. And I think that that's something that kind of gets swept under the rug, in that it's fine to be bad, right? If you want to try to be bad and play the lottery odds, that's one way to do it. But there is also something to be said of getting playoff experience and then growing from that. And I think, as he described it, where often he would go to the basket, so the Hawks would try to get Capella onto him, and RJ recognizing the need for more of a pull-up game because he can go under a lot, and just how can he pull up and learn? And that's where he talked about as well with DeMar DeRozan, where he wanted to maybe work with him because his footwork is so impeccable, and even said to DeMar during a game, I'd love to work with you in the off season because your footwork's crazy. Kind of just learning about all of that, and then how it applies long term. And then when you see these younger teams, like as I've been watching Grizzlies and Timberwolves, it's very clear how young and inexperienced both teams are, and how this can actually pay off down the line for both franchises. But that, to me, the ability to not just play meaningless games at the end of the season, to actually fight for something, get some exposure to what it's like, and then see how you can improve from there. I really loved that.
It's interesting because we as we tend to, doing this podcast every week, we tend to focus so much on the micro of it all as it's happening. And we focused a lot on RJ's kind of explosion as he took on much more of a high usage role starting on New Year's Eve and moving forward to the end of the season. But if you look at his 3 years in New York in total, obviously not perfect, but if you were to kind of map out purely from a development perspective, a 3-year stretch where it's came in to arguably the worst situation imaginable, had a really tough time of it, and then things eased up in year 2, got that playoff experience as a clear number 2, number 3 kind of guy, because Rose was here too. But he was an off-ball guy. And then into year number 3, no playoff experience, but the team fought and the team was playing for something. It wasn't like I'm trying to think of the season to compare it to. It wasn't like 18-19 or 19-20 or any of those seasons where it was they were out of it, early on. They fought and they believed they could still get into the play-in to the very end. And RJ takes on this big usage role. I think after 3 years, I'm happy with where the development curve has gone as far as the track that he's been on and what he's done with it.
I would agree with that. And I think a big factor will be the efficiency, mostly because it seems like that's where a lot of people who maybe detract from what RJ Barrett has done sink their teeth into. And it is
fair to a certain extent.
Sure. I mean, it's something he absolutely needs to work on, but it also feels like, there's certain players where their inefficiency is a mere blemish, and for a player like RJ Barrett, where it feels like it's everything and he's just this ridiculous scorer and that's it, but he doesn't care about the quality of shots or how he's able to do it and all these things. So
completely agree.
It's frustrating. It is what it is. He's going to work on it. I like the fact that he's going to work on the pull-up game. That's something that the Knicks clearly like in players, especially 1 through 3 who pull up. So that's going to be a very fascinating development. But the last thing he also mentioned was about an extension. It was kind of this joking response with JJ Redick, because the question was asked, are you going to resign? And talking about how it's been so long since Nick has re-signed off their rookie contract. The last one being Charlie Ward in 1999. Of course, you could make an argument that Mitchell Robinson is up for that first, but he wasn't a first round pick. So even still, if you want to narrow it down, the first round pick to re-sign with the Knicks hasn't been since the 20th century. That's pretty sad and pathetic, but RJ was laughing about it. And basically he wants to be here long term. That was the implicit understanding. And when you also hear about how, again, this is the only place that he worked out for, he loved the Knicks through his grandfather, who said, according to RJ, that, RJ, you're going to be a Knick one day, all those things. So, and I'm sure just being in New York, being the guy, that's a pretty cool thing to be. So I would imagine that the Knicks would probably like to get something signed, sealed, and delivered, whether it's a max contract in the form of 5 years, whether it is something less in terms of years and in terms of finances. Because of course, if he signs a 5-year deal, it would just have to be the max. It can't be 5 years and short of the max at this point, this offseason, specifically by the deadline in October. But we'll see. It seemed like this kind of I'd like to be here too, and hopefully they can find some common ground.
I'm not sure if you heard, I pitched my prediction to Fred Katz last week that they would wind up at 5 for 150. What'd you think of
that? Well, the thing is, wouldn't it have to be the following offseason where they do that? 5 for 150?
He could accept
for 5 years.
Explain.
My understanding is that for 5 years, it would have to be at the stroke of midnight on the second day of free agency. That's when they're we got those tweets about Trae Young and and SGA, but midnight. It started at 6 p.m. on the first day, and then 6 hours later, that's when they could officially sign. So for RJ, it's either the 5-year max or waiting a bit. So they could give him a 5-year deal. It just have to be the max, unless they wait until the summer of 2023, in which case it's a different story. But then there's that gap of where like RJ is not tradable, not that they would look into doing it. So I don't know. Maybe they ultimately decide on, maybe it's a 4-year deal and it's like the same amount financially that you're saying, but just 1 year shorter. Maybe it is the full 5-year max. I really don't know where it falls. And again, as I've said, I would give RJ the max, but I'm also I want to be transparent here. That's much more of the heart talking probably than the head, which is often something I try not to do as much, but I believe in the talent. I believe in the amount of, building around him, even if he's not going to be like the guy, just having him be there and showing a commitment. Hopefully it's less. I'd love for all of these star players to sign for less, and then you could just keep adding them. But regardless, it would be great to just see him remain in uniform, and that's that.
It's an interesting point you make in terms of if it's at 5 years, it has to be the full max. I guess in that case, I would skew more towards the Jaren Jackson Jr. contract, which was a little bit higher than that actually, because that was that was 4 for 105, right?
Yes, and I mean, I don't know if this is the biggest factor, but Jaren Jackson Jr. is having such a bad playoff series that, like, I'm not using that as an indictment against Jaren Jackson per se, but it's also the thought of like, how do you value bigs? How do you value wings?
Yeah,
like,
I'm just talking about it in terms of a comp for money. I think that would be something that I would probably.
I think that the Jaylen Brown one is closer, honestly.
Yeah, the Brown 4 at the time, it was whatever it was.
Yeah,
it was 4 for 115. Maybe I'm a little high on that
with some bonuses included.
Yeah, with the bonuses, and if you factor in the escalating cap, point is, I think if you got him to $30 million a year, even if it was $30 million a year, with like it would take the maximum incentives to get to that $30 million a year. I think that's a nice round number that he would probably go for. But who knows? We'll see.
Well, for context, just really quickly, the 30.5 is what the RFA's max is this year. So increasing it probably like, I don't know, 32, maybe 33 when you consider whatever the following year's salary cap is.
Yeah.
It's not that far off from the max. So it's kind of that one of those, like, it's close, but not the full thing. So maybe, who knows?
Yeah. We'll see. Look, as far as the interview goes, and then we'll move on. I like the fact that he did it. I like the fact that he's 21 and he's cool with going on a podcast like this and just having a wide ranging conversation over the course of an hour about anything and everything. Like Julius did this a year ago, and he did it coming off of a year that was great for him. And it shows that RJ, I think, is in a good place with himself, with the organization, with everything, which is good, because one of the fears that I know I've had at times this season is that the way this year went, it took a lot of the good vibes from the Big 15 season and it flushed them down the toilet. And while I think some of the good stuff went away, obviously the good stuff involving Julius Randle in particular, and to a certain extent, I think involving Tom Thibodeau and the relationship between him and the front office. There is still a lot of good vibes here, and it's the good vibes at the place where you want it to be, which I think is with the young players, and RJ is obviously first and foremost among that. So good job by him going on and doing this. Yeah, I think that's really it. I know we have another cap or no cap coming up, but before we get to it, anything else from like the playoffs that you wanted to like mention or talk about or anything?
Yes, but I'm trying to also figure out how not to step on the toes of a future cap or no cap. So I'm going to say yes, but I'm going to save it for later.
Okay.
I know that's a bit of a teaser.
No, I think it's fine. I'm just trying to think if there's anything that we're recording this on Sunday, April 24th, 7:30 p.m. The Nets series has not ended yet officially, right? They still have another game that they could play.
It has not officially ended. No,
it has not officially ended. So so maybe I should save this joke for some point in the future. I'll save it.
Well, no. Now you have to say.
Well, it depends. If it would impinge upon like another, like if it's a sweep joke or anything of the sort, don't say it.
No, it's not. I just want to congratulate them on that playoff series that they won last year. That's a great accomplishment after 3 years of KD and Kyrie. It's a really nice job by them. And they should be really proud. They should be really proud of that.
They should. And here's a fun fact. If you look at the first 3 years, assuming, of course, that the Nets don't overcome a 3-0 lead for the first time in NBA history, which I got to be honest, as someone who was admittedly rooting against the Celtics more than rooting against the Nets this series, would be equally as hilarious for, the Schadenfreude. But assuming that's not the case, the Knicks in the Carmelo Anthony era will have won the same amount of playoff series in the first 3 years as the Nets will have in the first 3 years of the Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving era, which I don't know. That's pretty funny to me, at least. But
it's mildly amusing.
Not petty at all.
Everything about what's happened to Brooklyn is funny, and it's only backed by the fact that I predicted it on the Patreon pod.
Very nice.
Yeah. This is I may be able to take a few victory laps on a couple things. My belief in the Nets as a team that could do damage. Ooh, boy.
Well,
talk about stinkers.
The thing that I think we disagreed the most on is just that, I just didn't see a world where you can throw a team together a few weeks before the playoffs and they can march their way through it. I believe in this. I actually do believe in this roster with a full off season where Ben Simmons is on the team, when Joe Harris is coming back, when Kyrie's going to play every game, which is why next year is the 66 win year that next year is where the odds, we're going to throw a team together to beat the best defensive team we've seen in years. I think Brooklyn is kind of unstoppable right now, which, we'll see what happens.
Boston is kind of
what I say. Yeah, Boston. That's in the worst. Jeremy, I know you've experienced this. The two Bs, I've gotten it wrong every time I've referenced this series in conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to be clear. I bring it up, one, because it's fun. And two, I can give a flying fuck about the Nets, but I am nothing if not someone who is going to leave no stone unturned for a possible Julius Randle trade this offseason. And something I'm already having my eye on in light of Woj's tweet about an hour or two ago, saying that the Nets were surprised and disappointed. Disappointed. So tough to be disappointed in your player that you just traded for. That Ben Simmons is going to be suiting up for Game 4. I don't know. Maybe they're already tired of the Ben Simmons experience. I don't want Ben Simmons, but I'm already thinking about maybe a 3-team deal where Mr. Julius can end up in Brooklyn. Ben could go somewhere else, and maybe we could end up with a nice little player.
Jeremy, is this the perfect transition into this week's cap or no cap?
I'm honestly too stunned at the scenario, but yes, this is the perfect.
Yeah, I'll be honest, John. Love the creativity. The Knicks and Nets are not making a trade this summer, so
probably not.
It's wasted brain power, unfortunately.
Okay, listen.
Admittedly,
no stone unturned to get this man off my basketball team.
Admittedly, well done with the creativity. I just, it's like, can the Yankees and Mets fix their own problems? But no, they're never going to make a trade.
That was David Justice, right?
Again, no significant trade. Yes, David Justice for, first of all, 2001. Second of all, David Justice for Robin Ventura.
That's who it was, Robin Ventura.
Yeah, it doesn't compete here, unfortunately.
Well, they made a trade recently, the two teams, not too long ago.
Who'd they trade? Oh, Castro for, but those are two seventh relievers.
Even before then, there was a trade in the last few years.
Okay.
But there wasn't. My point is the Julius Randle of the Mets wasn't traded for.
No, I understand.
Steven
the ground for Cole didn't happen
to the Red Sox or Yankees, that type of move.
Exactly.
That's enough preamble. Let's give the people what they came here for.
AK, enough baseball talk for John.
No more baseball.
We're done. All right.
Mets are 12-5, by the way.
That they are, and the Yankees swept the Guardians. So we're both happy.
Yeah, that's the Yankee story from that series, right, Jeremy?
Listen, I don't condone what happened with the fans. Right. I'm just saying.
John, do you know what happened to Yankee
Zero
Stadium?
Clue. Absolutely none.
I actually rather him not know.
Okay.
Fine.
That's everybody who knows is what I'll say.
We can keep it at that.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break to tell everybody about PrizePicks. Shout out to PrizePicks, our sponsor, the daily fantasy made easy. I'm going to walk everybody quickly through the PrizePicks website so you can see what it's like to go on PrizePicks. So every They have multiple different sports. Here's some second half options if you'd like to, some prop picks if you'd like to. So for the second half, you can go Chris Paul, take the over or under on points. There's a points, rebounds, assists. You basically pick multiple players from different teams, I should say. So if you want to go Chris Paul, Brandon Ingram, and Jonas, you pick over or under, you place a wager, and they give you pretty good odds to do so. You could also do cross sports. So if I wanted to, I did this the other night, and I'll show you guys an example in a second. If you just want to do pitching outs, how far into a game is a pitcher going to go? I think Max Scherzer is going to go pretty far. This is saying he's going to go at least 6 innings. I think he'll pitch into the 7th. So I could take the over there. And here's what the odds would be if you just did these 4. So on $20, 4 correct is 5 times, 3 correct is 1.5. So that's how it works. I'm going to show you guys, John and Jeremy, what an example from the other night that is going to help us laugh at the Brooklyn Nets.
I love doing this. This is a good one.
Excellent.
Okay. So I think this is the one. Yes. So this was the night of game 2. I took the Drummond under on rebounds because I was pretty sure they were going to start playing him less minutes. So I just didn't see 8.5 in the cards.
Smart man.
I took Jason Tatum over on free throws because of how his game has been. He's just been driving. He barely hit it too. Because I figured there's 7 free throws out there for him to take. I took Chris Bassett, Mets. Right now, they're number 2 starter, although right now they're all pretty good. I took him over in 16.5 pitching out. So he had to pitch 5 2/3 innings. He hasn't pitched fewer than 6 all season. Jeremy, I got a little scared because this is the night that Chris Bassett gave up 5 runs in the 2nd inning. It's like,
oh.
So
and they kept him in?
They kept him in because they were basically like, if you allow another base runner, you're getting out of there. And he didn't allow a base runner through 6. So had 1 bad inning and then was able to stay in for 6 whole innings, give me 18 outs. And I thought after game 1, there's no way Kevin Durant's not going to hit at least a couple 3-pointers. Kyrie Irving seems to have no problem getting shots to fall. And I went with 2 overs on 3-pointers made. Here's the funny part about Katie and Kyrie. Every single over by them that night missed. Every single under hit. So if I just take the under on, no, not every. Because Kevin Durant free throws it over because he took 20, made 18. But the free throws on Kyrie missed, the points obviously under, the rebounds, assists, everything else went under except for Kevin Durant free throws. That hit over. So that's how good of a job the Celtics are doing. So I was able to hit 3 out of 5 on this one.
So Kyrie hit as many 3-pointers as Ben Simmons did.
Yes. All season, actually.
Well done.
Kyrie Irving hit as many 3-pointers this game as I did. So PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. If you want to play along throughout the playoffs, I've seen that it's added an extra excitement to the games. You can bet as little as 2. They're running a promotion this weekend where they were paying out 5 times your wager on 2 picks. So if you just went Durant and Jason Tatum the other night, and you took Durant's under and Tatum's over, you'd have had five times the your wager for the night. And
they do a lot of those promos. So
they do like a 0.5 point total. Embiid for the opening night, it was 0.5 for points. So if he made a free throw, which the Sixers are going to shoot free throws. Then you hit on that, and then you just had to hit on 4 others. So they do promos like that all the time. Head to prizepicks.com and use promo code Film School and receive an instant match on your first deposit up to $100. So if you want to put $100 down for the rest of the playoffs with your first deposit, they'll match it, and you have $200 to play around with. If you want to, like on a night that you would normally put $20 down, you want to play 4 different $5 bets, you can do that. They allow, I think, as little as $5 on the wagers too. PrizePicks, daily fantasy made easy.
All right. So today's conversation, obviously, I didn't actually mean to wear the Patreon shirt that we had. It was truly subconscious, but nevertheless, it's got Julius Randle, and it has him as Julius Caesar. Again, like this was inspired because of an incredible season that Julius Randle had in the 2020-2021 year. And it's just still so frustrating that we were at that place and now we're here. And this idea that like, I'm trying to figure out, I still can't quite figure out exactly where it started. Maybe it was that Julius Randle got paid and he decided like, cool, I'm no longer in a contract year. I feel comfortable. I don't have to do anything. That's fine.
You don't believe that, and neither do I.
No, maybe it has something to do with the crowd, shouting, "We want Obi," which is code for we don't want Julius because we know that they weren't going to play together. Maybe it was something behind the scenes. Maybe it was something that we just don't know about and we'll never know about. It's more just like, I get so frustrated by it because he could have had everything. Really, he could have had everything. We're so desperate as Knicks
You were
fans.
the chosen one.
Right. And what does he do? He just, as Clyde would say, lackadaisical effort. Missing shots that obviously he was incredible at hitting. Yeah. Not being a player using his strengths that maybe on paper he has, but he doesn't want to do because he doesn't want to be boxed into that type of player. So, it's frustrating, but we're going to talk about Redacted, right? Isn't that how we're going by? It's Redacted.
Of all the things that I'm going to leave behind in this world when I depart it, Redacted is amongst the top of the list.
It's fair. Yeah. Well, figured that would be the best way to put it for Julius. So, John, do you have any words before we get started? I know you're a very large Julius Randle fan, so maybe you have some pushback on anything that I've said.
No, it is sad. What I've started to think more and more about is, there is still a world where this is still a very useful basketball player. And I can't escape remembering what he was before he came to New York as a guy who played a very particular type of way in very particular types of lineups. And I wonder whether some team will remember that, and they will almost like, it won't be for them about trading for the guy that finished, whatever, 8th in MVP voting a year ago, but it'll be about trading for like the battering ram who like just lived at the rim, in the last year in LA and like the year he was in New Orleans. And was like pretty good at that. And now has maybe added a couple other tools to his game, and is paid not a ton of money, as you have pointed out more than anyone, correctly so. So that's more what I've been thinking. But in terms of like the sentiment of where, it going wrong, like, yes, Redacted indeed.
Very fair. So before we actually start, I want to bring up 3 key points, corrections from our last podcast that I feel are important for me to bring up. Okay. The first this is from Adam at the Fiend Machine _ on Twitter. Adam correctly reminding me that it's actually the 11th and the 42nd picks in the draft that the Knicks have, not the 11th and the 41st picks. So thank you, Adam. Big difference. I know.
Big difference.
One pick could be the deciding factor between, hey, Nikola Jokic, didn't he go 41st overall?
Sure.
Who went 42nd overall in that draft? We don't know exactly. Then the next one is I actually have to go. Okay, so it's at Intero Bang Bros. That is the name. Giving me a fantastic reminder. I can't believe I did this. In the last podcast, John, I completely forgot in the Hornets payroll that LaMelo Ball existed. I don't know how.
Okay. It happens to the best of us.
It does. But it actually also further proves my point where if you added another $10 million to the Hornets and their payroll, they'd be deeper into the luxury tax, which is also why I still think the Gordon Hayward trade makes even more sense, more money to add.
A lot of people really like that trade, by the way, Jeremy.
They did, which gave me the worry that I was too generous from the Knicks perspective because, maybe that pick is too tantalizing, but hey, the Hornets still have the 13th pick overall. So, is Hayward good enough where the Hornets balk at the idea of attaching a first round pick? I don't really know, but yes, I was very flattered that it caught wind with a lot of people and I really appreciate that. And then the third thing was, as you and I discussed off air, Julius Randle's cap hit is going to be different than previously anticipated. So it's not the $26+ million cap hit for the Knicks because his likely bonuses didn't hit this year. It's actually going to be closer to like 23.8.
So I spent a lot of time on that one this week because I wrote something earlier in the week, and I'm going to be doing lots. If you're interested in fake Julius Randle trades, don't only listen to this podcast. Come check out the Knicks Film School newsletter. Got another banger coming up on Monday. So let's see if let me say this, and then if I get something wrong, you correct me. The escalators in his contract, the bonuses, the incentives in his contract, they're basically split 50-50. One is purely a player performance-based incentive that has to do with winning. I forget what it is. MVP, all NBA, all things that Julius Randle did not do this year. And thus those unequivocally go from likely bonuses to unlikely bonuses, meaning they don't factor into his cap number. So Knicks don't have to worry about that. His outgoing salary, a team doesn't have to worry about his incoming salary. That doesn't change. The thing that we were going back and forth about is the other half, the other 50% of his bonus structure, which is worth about 1.18 million. And it says that if he plays over 65 games and he makes the playoffs, he gets another $1.18 million. Now, the Knicks did not make the playoffs this year. He played over 65 games. So for the Knicks purposes, as best as I could read the CBA, at least, that is now an unlikely bonus for them. So when the new league year hits and his number goes on the cap sheet for them, it is going to go down as whatever number you just said, 23.76 million.
Yep.
If he though is traded to a team that made the playoffs last year, because that team made the playoffs last year, it is no longer unlikely. It becomes a likely bonus because, as I understand it, he played the 65 games and he's now on a team that made the playoffs. So his outgoing salary would actually be more than his incoming salary would be more than his outgoing salary. And we haven't even gotten to the trade bonus part of it, which is another complicating factor. But we'll save that for a sec. Anything I missed or was wrong on?
Honestly, it's something that I'm not the most clear on. Like, for example, as we'll go into later, the trade bonus is not something where you can just duck it as soon as, like, if you trade him before free agency starts.
No, it's not. And thanks to Bobby Marks. So he wrote a piece for ESPN.com last week, the whole Knicks offseason thing. Like, that trade bonus that's coming down the pike. And there's only one man who can get rid of the trade bonus. His name is redacted. If Julius Randle says, I don't care about the, what is it, $11 million is coming, $11.5 million is coming my way. Keep it, New York. It's all good. Everything's copacetic here. Unless he says that, he's getting that money, and there's nothing that the Knicks could do about it at all.
Yes. The one thing to consider, though, if you're thinking like, oh my God, of course he's going to take the money. We have seen in the past players have renounced their trade bonuses so they can facilitate a deal. Yeah. So, like, if that's the case, then great. If the Knicks have to pay it, it's not exactly going to count against the cap because he's already gone. So,
again, this is based on my reading of it. The Knicks pay it, but it counts. At least this is the way Bobby Marks made it sound. And again, I don't know that I read the CBA the way he did, but I trust Bobby Marks over myself. It counts against the cap of the team that's acquiring him.
Right.
Yeah. So,
which wouldn't be the Knicks.
Which would not be. So this is a very long-winded way of saying if Julius Randle gets traded to a playoff team this summer and he does not want to waive his trade bonus, his incoming salary for them is going to be about $5 million more for next season than the outgoing salary will be for the Knicks. It's the long and the short of it.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
we'll get into why this, if you're like, why are you wasting my fucking time with this?
We will.
It trust me, this stuff, it matters when you're trying to come up with trades.
So what's the agenda for this year, this offseason at least, right? Upgrade the roster. Duh. I mean, of course, we want to see the Knicks upgrade the roster. But ideally, at least from our perspective, and we'll get into those who might differ, it's with Julius Randle going out. And the biggest factor, I think, has now become the presence of Obi Toppin. It used to be, hey, Julius Randle, he's just not going well here. We should consider the idea of trading him. And now it's much more, no, the guy who's waiting in the wings, the backup quarterback, he's kind of ready to be the starting quarterback, just given some of the things we've seen. And of course, at the end of the season, there can be a mirage, right? This what we saw with Obi Toppin at the end did not feel like a mirage. It felt like unearthing something that is worth investing in, because of the fact that Julius Randle and Obi Toppin are not going to be playing together, at least not based on the current way that Tom Thibodeau operates. It only makes sense that you move one and give the other the time. And now moving Obi Toppin, you could do that and you could keep Julius Randle. But then it's also
but also light yourself on fire.
Right. It's okay. Well, what timeline are you concentrating more in?
Yeah.
Again, the Knicks could go any which way. They could be talking out of both sides of their mouth when they say young core and at the same time trade away young players. Maybe it's hope, but I'd like to believe that they recognize that the timeline is more of the younger players, not Julius Randle as he enters his age 28 season, which, mind you, isn't like old. It's just focusing on the timeline of which player you might want to more better focus on.
And just to be really put a point on it, because I feel like we need to re-inject this into every segment of this conversation. None of these considerations are things that are in a vacuum. What they can get for Julius Randle has a lot to do with which of these two, you're at the fork in the road, which one you pick. So, it's not, unfortunately, it isn't just about Obi's awesome. We want to see more Obi. Like Julius factors into that part of the conversation as well.
Yes, it does. And now if no stars move this summer, then the Knicks will probably shift their focus 2023, see who might crop up there. And it's kind of like, well, if Randle has to go right now, then the Knicks should look for a money substitute so that way, if they do want to focus on 2023, they have the salary ready to go, or at least more salary they can use. And that way, by doing it, they can sort of spread out their investments of different contracts, right? So it's not like you have to trade this guy or that guy because those are the only couple contracts you have that are salary filler. It's, we have an assortment of players, teams can choose how they want, and then we can kind of proceed from there.
Yep.
So the Julius Randle extension, why? Right? Why? I'm sure there are fans who are thinking like, why did the Knicks agree to this? Well, Julius, again, had an incredible 2020-2021 season. When you finish as a second All-NBA player, even if it's different from the work of the body of work that you've seen before, that is someone you want to invest in. It just is. It's the sort of thing where we can look back and say, oh, was that the right decision? Would I do it again? I would. I honestly would. Call it stubbornness.
They had
I really don't think it is. It's like you want to be in a position where you're locking into a player. And yes, are you losing cap space by doing that? 100%. We could be talking about the fact that by renouncing Julius Randle's cap hold, the Knicks have money to spend. But at the same time, by extending Julius, they gained valuable team control. Why is that important? Because they also avoid the sign and trade. If you watched our cap or no cap last week, you would know that one of the three ways that team gets hard capped is by facilitating a sign and trade. If a free agent is signed and traded to a team, that team becomes hard capped. Now, if the Knicks wanted to engage in a trade using Julius Randle, the team that would be acquiring Randle isn't going to be hard capped, at least certainly not by acquiring Randle in this way, because he's already under contract. And that is something that's very crucial for teams that are like very close to the tax apron, which is again above the luxury tax, which you cannot go past if you are hard capped. So this is the philosophy that Brock Aller used in Cleveland. They did it with Larry Nance. They did it with Jordan Clarkson. They care more about.
They did with Kevin Love.
Focusing on team control versus letting a guy test the market, having this gap in between when you can trade them and when you can't. And I honestly think it is the right approach. But I understand with everything that happened with Julius, why others may feel they should not have done this.
But let's the second he was willing to take that extension, there was no world where they were not going to give it to him. We could quibble about, and I actually think the front office has probably not gotten enough criticism for certain things. I think the Kemba thing obviously is biggest one. I saw Benji tweeted today, like what a world it would have been if instead of Kemba Walker, they went out and signed Alex Caruso. I know he had injury issues this year, but how different would this Knicks team have operated? And we're sitting here talking about Julius, and this is another thing that other teams are going to have to consider. How much of Julius's struggles this season emerged originally from the fact that he tried to accommodate playing with a more ball dominant point guard, not to mention Evan Fournier, who's also the guy that likes to have the ball in his hands, so they deserve blame for some other stuff, not for this, as far as I'm concerned, at least.
I would agree with that. So what's Randle's value? Well, I mean, currently it's low. How could it not?
I got an empty beer can right here.
Well, not too dissimilar. I mean, it's the glass of beer is half empty in this case, or fully empty.
It's about to be empty. Yeah.
Right. Like, you could not have had a worse season in a lot of ways than, well, I guess that's kind of, it was a bad season. I'll put it that way. It was a very unfortunate season, and it felt like at times it could have been easily assuaged, and it just wasn't. Like, it just didn't get to that point. It wasn't even the on-court stuff, although it certainly didn't help. It was a lot of the effort. It was the fact that it seemed like his teammates were frequently rubbed the wrong way or tired of having to almost calm him down. Obviously it's the stuff on the court, but then it's the lackadaisical defense. So much of what the Julius Randle experience was, it was just the antithesis of the year before. And for Julius, it often felt like when he hits his shots, the rest of his game feels good. But when he doesn't hit his shot, everything falls to pieces.
Can we stay on that for 1 sec?
Sure.
Just because you said it and it just jogged my thinking. On a team like the Knicks, where he has the role that he did and still does until further notice, like, if he's not hitting shots on a night, it's not like they're going away from him. One, because that's kind of how their offense was designed. And two, much more importantly, he is the guy. He was the guy. He is the guy. He's going to get his shots every night. And I feel like on another team, if it's not his night, like, if there's a guy or two guys, in a perfect world, be two guys better than him, higher than him on the totem pole, that might be a little differently. And then the flip side of that coin, and I'm just thinking about the stars, the final star standings for the year for the newsletter, like, Julius still finished second. Like, there were a lot of games he had that were really quite good. And then there were a lot of games he had where it was just like, please get this guy out of the arena. But if you're another team and you're looking at this, it's like, it's not like he still didn't have nights this year where he was a really good player. It's just the ability to manage him on the nights where he's not as good, and just him as a personality.
Exactly. And that's why it's so tricky, because from person to person, they may have a different viewpoint. And that's why it is the eye of the beholder, where there are the nights where he does great things and you want to rely on that. And you think, well, maybe the Knicks can still hang on to that. Maybe Julius can be that player with X, Y, and Z. And then there's the other factor of like, oh my God, this guy is signed for another 3 years plus a player option that he'll for sure take. And like, it's hard to find a middle ground, but I really do feel that you can probably take the two and it's pretty close to neutral. And like, stability is a big factor. And I'm not even talking about the level of play, because as you're saying, and as we're both saying, the level of play was not the stable factor. No. What was stable was the fact that you can count on Julius Randle to play. Now, yes, if you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, well, maybe you don't want that. I hear you, right? Like, there were times where his play was so egregious that you didn't really even want him in the game. But there's something to be said of being healthy and being productive. And if we're talking about Julius Randle, where it's like things are a little bit more finely tuned around him and he's able to play, then hopefully you're getting something. But you have to kind of try to get into that factor of like, can you convince him? And maybe you can if you're another team. I also know that Andrew Wiggins, Glenn Taylor, and he sat down, had a conversation, and Glenn Taylor was like, Andrew, I'm going to give you this max contract under one condition, and that's that you dedicate more of yourself to this and become a more complete player. And Andrew Wiggins said, yeah, that sounds great. I will absolutely do that. Takes the max contract, does not become the more complete player, goes to Golden State and became an all-star this year. So, right. I know. I understand. It's not, yes. But the point being that there was still another gear that he was able to achieve. It just had to be another place.
Yeah.
And you would hope that that could be the case with Randle if it's not going to be here.
Sure.
The next thing is, there's talk of like a max contract. And the reason I have it in quotes is because if he stays a Knick, Julius's cap hit is going to be 19.5%. For context, a max contract for a player with 7 to 9 years of experience, where Julius Randle would fall, would be 30% of the salary. Or 30% of the salary cap. So we're talking about a whole 10.5% less than that.
And that would change after because he's in what year right now? He's at some point in this, if he stays on the Knicks on this contract, he would get to the higher range, which is 35% of the cap.
Yes. Well, let's see. He was a Laker for 4 years. One of those years he was injured, but still a Laker. And then he was let go because of the LeBron.
So he just finished his 8th year.
So it's 5, and he's been here 3. So it's 8. Yeah. Yes. So that was why the thought process before, or at least last season, was like, well, what if Julius Randle wants to sign, an extension that gets into the 10-year mark and then re-ups for the 35%? Unfortunately, that's not going to be the case. He's locked in, which is great. But I think something to keep in mind, I haven't seen it floating around a lot recently, but for those of you who are out there, if you are thinking this, or someone who's thinking this, that goes around saying, oh, it's ridiculous, Julius Randle's on a max contract, do this. If someone's saying that, ask them if they consider Terry Rozier a max player or Dorian Finney-Smith. And the answer is going to be no. So then you can basically say, all right, so let me get this straight. Those two players signed for the max contracts they were eligible for, and they're not earning the full max, right? And they're not max players. But Julius Randle signs this contract, and he is a max player. And the answer you will get is silence, because they will have nothing to respond to that. Because Julius Randle is not a max player. He was on a contract that basically was the max, that will no longer operate as a max deal moving forward.
I like that, Andrew. That was good.
And then as John and I were talking about, there's the trade bonus. It's a 15% trade bonus, $11.5 million. Again, Julius Randle can always void this if he wants the trade to go through to a place, if money is an issue. The way that Bobby Marks discussed it, it's $2.88 million over 4 years, starting in the season that actually just passed, this current season, if Randle's traded before June 30th. And then if it's after July 6th, it's actually $3.8 million over 3 years, starting with next season. And thinking about what about that time in between July 1st and July 5th?
No one can sign any contracts.
No one can sign. Right. The moratorium's there. So it's basically there's not going to be this weird, awkward gap in between. It's just unlikely to happen.
And again, this doesn't all this does is make a deal harder, because it's not like the incoming team or the team that's trading for him has to pay this money. The Knicks have to pay the money, but it still goes on their cap sheet. So I guess they do. I mean, they will care about it because that's money that they can't spend on other players, I guess is, that's the annoying part.
Exactly. So here's the argument for keeping Randle, because there are people who do subscribe to this feeling, and I want to hear them out. So that his value can be rehabilitated, right? Yeah. He had a bad year. A lot of things happen, whatever. Maybe there's a chance that he can be a better player, both to the Knicks or as a trade asset. Maybe. I also just have to wonder what the opportunity cost is with Obi Toppin, the players around him. You could say, well, what if they bring in better talent to surround Randle with? Sure. Yes. But I also would make the argument that, and I know there will be pushback on this, but based on what the Knicks want to do with their vision, they did effectively do that, right? They didn't trot out Elfrid Payton.
It's literally what they did.
And Reggie Bullock. And I understand Reggie Bullock's having a nice postseason with the Mavs this offseason, but they wanted more pull-up shooting. They wanted more offensive weapons around him. And we saw Randle shrink in a lot of ways. And so it's just it's hard for me to subscribe to the idea that better talent will fix this problem, because they did try to go in that direction. And yeah, I mean, of course, it would be nice if Alec Burks didn't see as many minutes as at the point guard position, especially with Julius. Get Emmanuel quickly in there. Do more, throw Deuce McBride into the fire, whatever it is. But even still, they did make, it felt like marginal upgrades because of how things were going at the point, but that was the intention. And it went backwards. So that wasn't great. And then the thought process of well, no deal is better than a bad deal. Sure, there's merit to that, but at the same time, again, it goes back to Obi. It goes back to how the players in the locker room feel. Maybe they don't love being Julius Randle's teammates anymore, and they feel like a break is for the best. Maybe Julius doesn't even want to be there, and he feels why am I spending more time in a place where I don't necessarily want to be, where other players may allegedly not want me to be? Again, I'm speculating on this, but it's kind of there's a point in which if the offers are so bad that you don't do it, I just keep going back to, I see Julius Randle as a neutral contract, and I feel like there are ways where you can still manage to trade him and get back neutral value if that's what you're looking for.
Can I just just a quick word on that in terms of rehabilitating value? I'm not saying that there is no such thing as rehabilitating value in the NBA. Like there is, but like if we were talking about a situation where Julius Randle was seen as an albatross, like a true albatross, kind of like Kevin Love was a year and a half ago, right? Where like nobody in the league wanted nobody would give up something to willingly take on that contract. They would have taken on the contract that got something back. I've been more critical of the man than anyone. I don't think anybody thinks that is how Randle and his contract is being looked at around the league. And I'm pretty sure you're on the same page with me on that one, Jeremy, right?
I am.
Yes. Okay. So like, yes, Kevin Love rehabilitated his value because he decided to start playing basketball as opposed to doing whatever imitation of like children's hissy fits he was doing on the court there for Cleveland for a while. Like that's not where we're at. So like, let's say Julius Randle comes out next season and over the first 30 games, he's hitting 45% from long two and 39% from deep. Like, is anyone around the league suddenly going to look at that and be like, oh, okay, he's a top 15 player again. Let's give up no one's going to do that. Like his value is as far as I'm concerned, his value is what his value is. And I don't think that that's going to materially change.
Agreed. And I would say one thing to kind of consider, I'm not saying this will happen, but keep your eyes peeled in the coming months on any reports about injury or something where it helps Julius Randle's case where it's like there is an excuse for why things went downhill. Just nothing that's extreme, but I'm just saying like the prevailing thought of how you can try to control that narrative of why things didn't go well as a way to kind of get his value up in some way. I don't know for certain if it will happen, but I feel like we've seen a fair amount of that as time has gone on, especially with someone like Mark Berman, where if there's water that needs to be carried, the Knicks will find a way to do it. It's just a matter of if they want to go that route, maybe they don't.